Thank you for registering for this webinar. I really appreciate that you're here. Shelley S. Inspiring You Coaching. I am the founder, Shelley Simchism. This is on one of my beautiful courses that I've written my own, one of my babies, Improving Self-Awareness. I'm an empowerment transformation coach. Let's get started. If you can become aware of yourself, your strengths and your weaknesses, you will have a better idea of the effects you can impose and how to change them or whether you should. A vital way of becoming more effective in both business and life is by becoming more self-aware. If you can become aware of yourself, your strengths and your weaknesses, you will have a better idea of the effects you can impose. Implementing the guidelines in my course is the first step in continuing the process of deepening your awareness of yourself and the effects you have on people and situations. Becoming more effective can only boost your rewards in both your professional and personal life. I love this quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson. What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. So tonight I want to talk to you about the self. Too often we stumble through life and take a shallow view of ourselves. What is the self? To many, the answer might be so obvious that they haven't given it much thought. Others might proffer up one idea after another, finding each imperfect to an extent that they wonder if the self even exists. And if it does, can it be defined? They may or may not realize that this is a question humans have been asking for years or centuries, with answers from different eras often addressing not just what we are, but who we are at that particular place and time. Nor is the answer a trivial one, not at all. Too often we stumble through life and take a shallow view of ourselves and our environment and prevailing forces, and yet we can do better. How can we do better? Our first step is to become aware of who and what we are. This still fails to answer the original question, what is the self? No answer will be completely accurate and at all times precise. Instead, here is a temporary answer, good for the purposes of this workshop, is the self is the aspect of an individual organism that is aware of its existence as an individual organism. It's the part of ourselves that we were referring to when we each say I, as in I am thinking or I am feeling. One helpful way to think about the self and become more aware of our complete and total self is divided into 4 aspects that we're going to talk about: the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. Let's start with the physical. This is probably the most obvious aspect of oneself. Our physical bodies, awareness of our bodies, when the body is in great pain or distress, is usually strong, right? So if we're hurting or we've been hurt, we're aware. But when we feel physically neutral or slightly good or bad, we can block our awareness of the physical body and replace it with other levels of awareness. Awarenesses of our thoughts or our emotions, for instance. It is important to remember that each level of self affects the other levels of self. Feeling physically uncomfortable can lead to feeling emotionally uncomfortable. Feeling emotionally uncomfortable can lead to changes in our physical feelings. At a certain point, examining one's physical self requires an examination of one's physical environment, such that what emerges is the recognition that the two mutually interact, change, and reinforce each other. The aspect of one's environment and one's self interacting and changing each other is important to remember, not only examining the physical self and the physical environment, but at all levels of self-examination. Just as there is a physical environment that interacts with a physical self, there's a mental environment, an emotional environment, and a spiritual environment that interacts with each corresponding level of self. This becomes the vital part of understanding the concepts in this course. Next, we have the emotional self. Being aware of oneself on an emotional level means being aware of one's emotions. In a culture that values concepts such as logic and reason, emotion often gets undervalued. When people become emotionally expressive, others will tell them, calm down, or to act rationally. Being emotional is thought of as being out of control. This might give you the idea that emotions are things to be avoided. And some of us were raised that way. Emotions serve an important purpose in providing the self with information about its environment, as well as motivation for what to avoid or embrace in that environment. Typically, we speak of our bodies or of our emotions. We speak in terms of feeling sensations, things that come upon us rather than things we create. This gives us the impression of passivity. We are slaves to our physical and emotional needs. Rather than choosing how we feel, feelings hit us, and then we react. The most important thing is to remember is that we cannot avoid emotions. You can't avoid feeling your emotions, but we can intervene and through our actions change how we react to our emotions. And this can transform our future emotions in turn. Because our emotions right now are based on past experiences. I'm not going to get into that. That's another day. Being able to identify how you feel in any given moment is an important goal of becoming more self-aware. Next, we have the mental self. The mental aspect of self concerns your thoughts and your imagination like the physical and emotional feelings. Thoughts also have the capacity to come upon you without your control. But it is far easier to consciously change your thoughts, especially when you practice being more aware of them in the first place. When people think, they often think in sentences or words. Just as often, we all think in images or words and phrases that act as kind of a shorthand. Have you ever thought of it that way, like a shorthand? In these moments, it is quite easy for thoughts to get distorted and not accurately reflect a true situation. Last but not least, we have the spiritual self. This webinar, workshop, my course is not about any one religious belief, nor does it reject religious belief either. The use of the term spirit here is not meant in a religious sense. It's really important for everyone to understand that. Instead, the spiritual self is about your continuing sense of identity. The spiritual self is the realm of what a person values. It's the worldview and source of motivation. The emotional self and mental self are all about the feelings and thoughts of a person in a given moment. The spiritual self is about that interconnectedness of thoughts and feelings over time that forms into a sense of personal identity. It's all connected. It's like the infinity symbol. It's all connected. Which brings me to the next slide by Martha Graham. The body never lies. Your body's never lied to you. You may ignore the nudges, you may ignore what's going on, but your body never lies to you. So validation of emotions. You might have heard it said that all emotions are valid, but what exactly does that mean? What exactly does that mean? Anytime you feel an emotion, are you perfectly justified in feeling an emotion? For example, if your kid spills a glass of milk, does that validate the emotion of being angry? Are you correct in being angry with your child? Perhaps the notion of correct versus incorrect is the wrong approach. To validate the emotion means that in any situation, if you feel anger, regardless of the cause, it is valid to acknowledge to yourself that you do indeed feel angry. To validate the emotion means that denying an emotional state is a dangerous action that can have negative consequences, often resulting in emotional breakdown, or you're going to manifest other things. And I'm going to give you an example. In the last 18 months, I was allowing myself to be suppressed. It wasn't done purposely. It's not about making anyone wrong. And it doesn't matter about the situation in that. But I was not aligned. I was not able to express myself. I was not able to be me. So, if you can't have what you can't express. And so when I was suppressing this, I was creating a negative emotion in me, right? I wasn't happy. I was disappointed. I was frustrated. It manifested in, I started to develop high blood pressure. I put on weight. My body was manifesting the stress in different ways. Now I can say in the last 4 or 5 months, I have changed that. I've lost 20 pounds, 22 inches. I've got my spiritual self, my mental self, my emotional self. I left the situation. I was choosing to stay. It was on me, not anyone else. But once I did make the decision to go, my life changed. Things got better. And I just want you to know it's important to validate the emotions. The question is, how long are you going to stay there? What are you going to do with that emotion? So, brings me to the utility of emotions. Before human beings established cities and civilizations, life was, in the words of Thomas Hobbes, Hobbes, mean, nasty, brutish, and short. At any moment, a person could be in mortal danger. Dinosaurs, cavemen, the wild, wild west, talking about all that. Any moment a person could find themselves in mortal danger. In this type of environment, the ability to feel fear served a purpose that was often the difference between life and death. If you felt fear, your sympathetic nervous system could stimulate your adrenaline glands, and you would feel the impulse to run away or fight, right? Fight or flight. With adrenaline coursing through your system, you could approach the situation as if it was the life and death situation it actually was, more often than not. Of course, nowadays, we might feel as if a situation is a matter of life or death, when upon further reflection, we realize it isn't. Nevertheless, when we feel emotions, they provide us with important information. Emotions are awareness. Information is an awareness. It's a necessary about both our environment and, more importantly, our assessment of that environment. So some things I want to talk about is emotional arousal. Arousal versus valence. In order to make the best use of our emotions, it becomes important to be able to identify how we feel at any given moment. Psychologists have developed the theory of emotional granular to help us with just that. According to this theory, emotions can be identified with 2 different primary characteristics: the level to which they excite us, known as arousal, and the degree to which they experience them as pleasant or unpleasant, known as valence. Everyone knows what a valence is, right? Emotions that are characterized as having high arousal would be emotions such as joy, anger, enthusiasm, anxiety. Notice there's good and bad in there. Low arousal emotions would include depression, but also calmness. If your thoughts tend to race along with your pulse, you're probably feeling an emotion or group of emotions that are characterized by high levels of arousedness. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. That is so, so true. And if you haven't heard that before, please write this down. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Speak to me about this. Whole other section. Next, one of my favorite things to talk about is emotional intelligence. Once you accept that emotions are valid, it's tempting to think that expressing them in every instance is the way to go. Sorry, people, that's not true. Like the emotional granular theory, the theory of emotional intelligence is one that helps you understand how to make the best use of your feelings. So if you're feeling angry, what are you going to do with that? How long are you going to sit in that anger? Once you accept that emotions are valid, it's tempting to think that expressing them in every instant is the way to go. Like the famous gag in the television show Seinfeld, to indicate your anger or frustration, you could run around screaming, "Serenity now!" Do you guys remember that? If you don't, for you younger people, Google Seinfeld and Serenity Now. You will get it. There'll probably be something from the episode there. Anyhow, let's move on. Unfortunately, that's not what it is called for when you accept the validity of your emotions. Emotional intelligence means understanding what your emotion signifies and the appropriate and helpful ways in which you make the emotion work for you. So that brings us to categories of emotion. One useful way of thinking about emotions is to divide them into categories based on how they help us perform. We could assign one category for emotions that always help us to perform well. Emotions such as enthusiasm, confidence, and optimism would fall into this category of high performance emotions. These high performance emotions are characterized as being high arousal emotions and as being emotions where our focus is wide and open. If we have a category for high performance emotions, then it is understandable we should have a category for emotions that always interfere with high performance. And these are called blue emotions. And they include such emotions as dejection, depression, boredom, disappointment. These emotions are marked by qualities of low arousal and a narrowed and closed focus. Your focus is very closed and narrow. A third category for emotions would cover these emotions that could either improve in performance or impede it. So these can improve or impede. So these emotions include anger, anxiety, and frustration, and they are called swing emotions, okay? They can swing either way. So let me give you an example. Take anxiety, okay? If someone preparing for a test was to feel anxious about the test, this could lead either to that person studying harder or freezing up, right? If the anxiety led to more studying, we could say that emotion caused the person's behavior to swing into the realm of high performance. If the anxiety made the person freeze up, then obviously that person didn't do well on the test, and the effects of that emotion led to decreased performance, as if the emotion were a blue emotion. Swing emotions are characterized as being high arousal emotions, but with narrowed focus. I have a fourth category here, and it doesn't get discussed much because we really don't recognize emotions in this category as emotions, but rather we view them more as neutral states. However, low arousal and wide focus. So these are low arousal and wide focus is calm and satisfaction. They can be high performance emotions as well. Next, how do we increase our emotions? How do we increase arousal? We exercise, we play, we listen to upbeat music, we sing. I'm sure you have other ideas. I would love to hear them. Send them to me. If you ever felt depressed, you can probably understand why raising your arousal level might be a helpful way to go. The trick to emotional intelligence, then, is to recognize how you're feeling, determine what needs to be done in order to feel a different way. Fortunately, in the case of blue emotions, there are numerous ways to increase your arousal levels and thereby put your emotions into one of the high performance categories. When you're feeling enthusiasm and optimism, here are some suggestions. Start with exercise, right? Exercise. It's been proven that exercise raises the dopamine, right? Releases dopamine. That's our happy hormone, right? So listen to upbeat music. A steady beat has the capacity to pump a person up and get them feeling greater levels of enthusiasm. Sing. Well, it might sound hokey. I don't sing in public, but singing with all your heart can really help. To the quote of the Beatles, take a sad song and make it better. Not only is this the physical act of singing a kind of massage for our lungs and throat, the movement of the air through your vocal cords in the form of vibrations can arouse your energy levels. Did you know that, people? Another one is play. One really great way to cope with blue emotions is to engage in some form of game. Playing taps into our inner child and reawakens our sense of optimism, enthusiasm. So go play hockey, go play baseball, go play a board game. Me, I'm a disc golfer. Go play disc golf, Shelley. Just go play. Open up that inner child. Go splash around in a splash pad. Do whatever. Here's a good tip. Do something in play that you haven't done for a long time or you haven't done since you were a child. There's a really good tip. So, humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. I think I skipped. No, I did not. So that's my next one. So, humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. So next I'm going to give you one thing out of the program that I haven't heard anyone talk about in my former communities, but it's navel gazing. Now, we all talk about going within. The answer is within. We are the how. And if you're not familiar with all this, just it's okay. Have a conversation with me. Book a call. Okay, so navel gazing. I'm going to give you an example. One danger of spending too much time and energy on developing yourself is that you can become stuck in a mode of seeing everything only as it relates to you. This notion of fancying yourself the center of the universe is referred to as navel gazing because it evokes the image of someone sitting in meditation staring down at their navel or their stomach. Once you start becoming more self-aware, it is important to invest time in getting out of yourself. And one way of getting out of yourself is serving others. You want to serve others, okay? So there's different things out there, right? And you can serve others. You can volunteer. I love serving others and helping others and have their aha moments. So studying yourself and always improving your self-awareness, don't get me wrong, it's very, very important. But don't get into that mode that's all you're doing, okay? You don't want it to work against you. You want to use that self-awareness and help others. So next, this is some of my favorite quotes. This is William Shakespeare. This above all, to thy own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day. Thou canst not then be false to any man. So be true to yourself, you can be true to others. I think self-awareness is probably the most important thing towards becoming a champion. One who knows others is wise, and one who knows the self is enlightened. I want to thank you for registering and being part of this webinar, this workshop. This is about my baby that I created, Improving Self-Awareness, my course. But I want you to know that it's very thought-provoking and there's a lot more in there. We talk about activity management. We talk about different ways of meditating, scanning. I'm going to do some lives on this. Time. Talk about priorities, getting your priorities. Steve Covey, I refer to his book and talk about his quadrants, right? If you're not aware of that, again, reach out to me. Different learning styles. We talk about different learning styles. There's auditory, visual, addressing different learning styles. How to make sure you're accommodating the different learning styles, right? And that you are learning in the way that you need. And this is what I'm talking about. I'm going to individualize the programs, not only for you, to learn, but also there are different levels of investment for you to invest and come in this. Now, there's a lot of high ticket coaches out there, and I have worked with and contracted with some of these high level coaches. And I want to tell you, I am a high level coach, high touch coach, but you are not going to pay high ticket prices. A lot of the coaches out there talk about changing global consciousness, and this is what I want to do. I want to work with the masses. I want to work with you. I want to work with people that really want to do the work but struggle with coming up with 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000. I sold $100,000 programs, $150,000 programs in other communities. I can promise you, you will not be putting out that kind of money. All you got to do is have a conversation with me, and we're going to individualize it. I do have starting points, but I want you to know I'm going to do the best that I can to work with you and help you. I'm here to serve you first. Thank you for watching this. I look forward to having a call with you. Reach out, let's book a call. Have a great, great day, night, evening, wherever you are.